Welcome, everyone, to the 9 Innings Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Kevin Thompson, founder and CEO of 9 Capital Group. Thank you guys for joining us. As I always say, subscribe to the channel. As I always say, go and get my book, MLB to CFP, live on Apple and Amazon. Yeah, any questions, comments, or concerns, you can email us at info@9icapitalgroup.com. Send us your questions, or you can go to the website at www.9icapitalgroup.com. Schedule your appointment. As you know, we're here to do what? Educate, empower, and engage. And today, we're talking about the conundrum, the paradox, the precarious situation that the Fed's currently in. We're going to talk about Jerome Powell and the Fed and what's in front of them. A lot is in front of them. If you want to learn a little bit, you got to stay tuned. Let's get it. Why are we saying the Fed is in a precarious situation? Well, case in point, we all know the Fed has a dual mandate. The Fed's job is not easy. The dual mandate is price stability and full employment, otherwise known as the dual mandate. But why are these mandates so crucial? Firstly, price stability. Price stability ensures that inflation remains in check. Full employment aims to maximize job opportunities. Balancing these two goals, very vital for the healthy economy. Powell faces significant challenges with the sticky housing prices and the high owner equivalent rents that are keeping prices elevated. Why do I say that? When we're talking about price stability and when we're talking about consumer pricing, PPI, CPE, and all the other acronyms out there that the Fed uses as their data inputs, the largest component of the inflationary dynamic is owner's equivalent rent. So what is owner equivalent rent? Well, someone calls my house and says, "Hey, Kevin, you're a homeowner. What do you think you can rent your house out for?" Of course, we're always going to say, I can rent my house out for more than I'm paying for my mortgage expense. So if my mortgage is, say, $2,500 or $3,000 a month, I should be able to rent my house out for more than that. So with higher housing prices comes higher OER, or owner's equivalent rents. That's the part of inflation. When you see the numbers, it's traditionally not coming down fast enough. So the Fed's reaction, we'll get there in a moment, but we're just talking about price stability. So now prices, all the inputs continue to go up, grocery prices, gas prices, et cetera, the things that, and of course we know that core CPE takes out food and energy. But outside of that, we have all these other prices continually to go higher or remain steady. Now let's talk about unemployment. Unemployment has been a bastion of good news, right? We've had unemployment be in the threes for I don't know how long, for almost, it seems like years now. Unemployment has been at full employment for a long time. So that hasn't been a concern for the Fed. So the only concern for the Fed right now is price stability. Now, they've raised interest rates to over 5%, and rates have remained there for a long period of time. So the issue with that, let's go back to the housing, is if the Fed's intention is to use interest rates to lower housing costs and impact overall prices, which is very straightforward, it's not easy. Firstly, higher interest rates dampen consumer spending and business investment. Borrowing costs rise, individuals and businesses delay spending and expenditures, and it slows down the overall economy. This could potentially hinder the Fed's goal of achieving full employment, even though they're already there. Because if this continues to happen, people will begin to lay people off, which basically will make the unemployment rate go a little bit higher. But I think they're willing to take a little bit of unemployment to crush inflation. Secondly, The housing market is intricately linked to the overall broader economy. A downturn in the housing sector could have ripple effects in various industries, leading to a slowdown in the overall economy. The industries such as construction, real estate, and finance. This could exacerbate economic challenges and hamper efforts to achieve price stability and full employment. Thirdly, using interest rates to directly target housing is not guaranteed. It doesn't mean it's going to work. It may reduce demand for housing, subsequently lowering prices, which could lead to unintended consequences. For example, those people with adjustable rate mortgages is definitely going to impact them for higher mortgage costs, potentially causing financial strain and consumer spending. Next, in the housing market, it's influenced by a myriad of other factors, not just interest rates, supply, demographics, government policies. The Fed's ability to significantly impact those markets is limited. And finally, the magnitude and the timing of the Fed rate cuts are going to be crucial, right? A misstep in monetary policy could inadvertently have terrible effects on the economy, triggering imbalances and what have you. The Fed cannot prematurely lower interest rates because they've seen this in the past, especially in the 70s. Volcker, all the other guys, the yo-yo effect on we lowered interest rates, now we got to hire them. They don't want that. So the Fed's strategy, keeping rates higher for longer to influence costs, and especially in the housing market, may work, but it's just taking longer than they have expected. So that's in pertaining to cost and inflation and how that works. Now, unemployment, like I mentioned before, has remained steady. So that hasn't really been an issue because the economy's still doing well. We've been producing 3% prints in unemployment for a long period of time. And the Fed maintains that a 3 to 4% unemployment rate is considered full employment. So there's no issues there. So outside of price stability and full employment, the Fed is dealing with sticky inflationary pressures, and they're also dealing with wage pressures that haven't kept up with the overall inflation that people are seeing in their daily lives. Now, I know that food and energy aren't a core part of inflation. I get it. But when people go to the grocery store, the same $100 that they used to spend that got them a basket of goods doesn't get them that same level of basket anymore. It gets them half as much. So that's an issue. That's an issue for the consumer. So price stability, full employment, that's the dual mandate for the Fed. So that's part one. Part two, why do I say they're in a conundrum? Why do I say that there's a precarious situation headed for Mr. Jerome Powell? Well, politicization. One of the most pressing issues is the politicization of the rate decision, which is going to happen. Both Republicans and Democrats will weaponize rate cuts to serve their political agendas. For instance, prior or after the election, accusations of favoritism towards a particular party will arise, not may, will arise, putting Powell in a difficult position. Think about that. Think about him lowering rates prior to the election. What will the Republicans say? Think about him not lowering rates prior to the election. What will the Democrats say? We already know that former President Trump, doesn't want Jerome Powell as his Fed chair. He doesn't want Jerome Powell in that seat. So let's just say he lowers rates. He's going to use that against Jerome Powell. Let's just say he raises rates. Then the Democrats are going to say, well, you're doing that to gain favor to keep your job. Very, very tough, precarious situation, the politicization, the polarization that this is going to entail in the next 3 to 5 months. So next, here's the reason why I believe that the Fed's going to lower rates later in the year if they lower rates at all. So let's go back to the beginning. The market expected 4+ rate hikes this year. I don't know where they got that. They must have been reading some fairy tale novel. I never understood that because the data didn't suggest it. There has never been a piece of data that I've read from the Bureau of Labor Statistics to the Bureau of Economics that stated that this is what they were going to do based on what the Fed and Jerome Powell has consistently told us about, hey, we are going to be data dependent. 4 rate hikes was a bit much, and we never expected that. So our expectation was we may get 1 by the end of the year, possibly 2, but we're not seeing that really. If we get 1, it's going to be for a reason that I talk about later. But 2, 3, it's out of the question. Now, the reason why this is important because the market was interpreting this 4 rate cuts as positive and accretive to earnings. This is how it works. If you have a rate cut, what happens to earnings in the market? Earnings go up. But if you have a rate hike, earnings go down because you have to discount those future earnings. So that's what you're seeing when the market goes down because they're changing their expectations on the Fed rate cuts and or hikes to discount future earnings or to understand, okay, this is what the new valuation of the stock market should be. So the prices should adjust accordingly. So to understand that how market dynamics work. Now, our expectation is if we get a rate cut at the end of the year, it's because we have that dreaded need to, because our economy has slowed down to the point where the data is making sense. The data, inflation has come down, everything is starting to work in the direction the Fed says, so we're going to cut rates. But the issue the Fed has, and this is the next one I want to talk about, is the dreaded word that no one wants to utter: stagflation. Stagflation, you have lower growth and higher prices. No one wants that. And that's the world we're living in at this current time. That's where we're headed. We have slowing growth and sticky and higher inflation. That is worse than overall every other type of inflation you can think of, outside of disinflation and all the other stuff. So if we're in a stagflationary environment, what does that mean for our overall economy? It's not good. So the Fed, if it's in a stagflationary environment, they can't lower rates because inflation is still too high to goose the economy. So they have to either just stand pat and allow the market to allow the economy to work through all of the muck to get itself out. And that's the worst case scenario, I believe, for the Fed, because you can't use rates to do one or the other. So in conclusion, do we expect the Fed to lower rates this year? If you get a rate cut, it's going to be latter half of the year. It's because the data is suggesting it. If you don't get any rate cuts this year, that's more of an expectation because there's no reason to lower rates at this present time. The only reason, and this is my opinion, I got to preface that with a disclosure, is that there's going to be a budget that needs to be produced for the government, a government budget that needs to be produced by the end of the year, and they're going to need to know exactly what to expect in regards to what they're paying on their deficits and how much money they have to spend for their projects. That's what needs to happen before the end of the year, and that's the reason you may get a rate cut if you get one at all. But you will get more clarity on what it looks like in the latter half of the year, possibly after the election. So to bottle this up, is Jerome Powell in a precarious situation? You're damn right he is. He's in a situation that none of us should be envious of. He's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't. And he has to remain apolitical as best he can because this will be politicized by both sides of the fence. It's sad that he has to deal with this because our political parties should not be so divided, because the last time I checked, that Constitution reads, "We the people." We the people. It's our job to be in business for us. And we send people to Washington to represent us, not represent themselves. That's my political stance, and I'm sorry if I put that out there. But in conclusion, Jerome Powell is in a precarious situation because this will be politicized and polarized to the nth degree. He has stagflation that is staring him right in the face, so he can't make any good decisions, any decisions whatsoever. And he has a market that has overstepped by thinking there's going to be more rate cuts than there were actually going to be. He has to come out and tell the market exactly what it is that he's doing, which I believe he has, because what I'm hearing is exactly what I need to be hearing. Is we don't expect any rate cuts anytime soon until the data tells us that. And I don't understand where the market's getting this language saying otherwise. But ultimately, he just needs to be more forthright. Like, no, we're not cutting rates not anytime soon, and let the market adjust accordingly, and allow all of the economics of the United States to kind of get itself out of this system, get itself out of this muck, and start having growth once again. Thank you guys for listening to the 980s podcast. Subscribe to the channel. Go and get my book, MLB to CFP, live on Apple and Amazon. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can email us at info@9icapitalgroup.com. Send us your questions. You go to the website at www.9icapitalgroup.com. Schedule an appointment. As you know, we're here to do what? Educate, empower, and engage. Subscribe to this channel. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on all these other channels at MLB to CFP. Thank you guys for joining us. Stay humble. Stay safe. I'll see you again soon.